Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me are my co-host, CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitton, and Executive Director of Global Content, Emily Parker. Good morning, Emily and Lawrence.
Good morning.
Morning. Little
it's
tired.
Like the day never ended yesterday.
It never ended. I was just obsessed with TikTok and a couple of music videos on Twitter and Instagram. I'll show you why in a sec. Let's check out the markets first, though. Right now, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price XVX index currently at $44,119. Bitcoin is slightly up about 1.3% over the past 24 hours. The ETX right now at $3,173. ETH climbing about 2.6%. And the DFX CoinDesk's DeFi index at 337. DeFi also making some gains of over 4% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions in 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. So yes, our top story of the day, the awkward duo, Ilya Dutch Lichtenstein and his wife, Heather Morgan, aka Razzle-Khan. Oh my God. Can we play a clip of Razzle-Khan? So this couple, they were arrested and arraigned in Manhattan court yesterday on money laundering conspiracy and conspiracy to defraud the United States. Charges linked to
and it wasn't just any money laundering, right? It was like probably one of the biggest hacks in the history of crypto outside of Mt. Gox.
And now they've seized, exactly 120,000 Bitcoin taken, now worth about $4.5 billion. Law enforcement were able to seize $3.6 billion from wallets linked to this crypto couple. We've got a clip of Razzle-Khan though, because it's taken crypto Twitter by storm. Do we have this shot?
Real risk taker, pirate riding the flood, badass money maker, grandmother crocodile, weirder than an X-File, brief fire, silver, so sexy when I
bought her entire catalog on iTunes.
I bought it. Yeah, I bought the entire catalog last night. And I was playing it all morning. My wife and I actually stayed up till about midnight, 12:30, just watching her videos on TikTok. It was it's actually high art. I think this is one of. I'm upset that I hadn't heard of her before. I liken her to Kitty, who's a rapper who came out about 10 years ago with the same kind of. Kitty, genius there with her music and the quality, but this was kind of a good runner-up. I wish I could have seen Razzle-Khan in concert. Hopefully if they let her out, you should wear the ankle bracelet, do a few shows. I'll pay for it.
But folks are seriously wondering, how did these folks attach themselves to this? Were they intelligent enough? Because it seemed like there was a lot of slip-ups, a lot of sloppiness in their execution of these alleged money laundering charges.
Yeah, if you read the complaint, you see a lot of these, things where they're keeping it in a spreadsheet. It seems like it's on a Google Doc on a cloud file. It's like, what? These are people who wrote. Ilya Lichtenstein has posted on Twitter many times complaining about people doing things that get themselves hacked. He thinks, he said he was upset with publications, including CoinDesk. It's like, hey, why aren't you covering, let's say, bugs in Polygon? And the same thing with her. She wrote articles in Forbes about how to prevent being hacked, and yet her stuff was on the cloud.
Right. She also wrote about how to become a success, which includes, being your authentic self, but it also excluded, potentially money laundering from a crypto exchange, but allegedly. And I'll just mention on January 31st, law enforcement also accessed the wallet, in according to this complaint, containing over 2,000 BTC wallet addresses and their private keys on Ilya's cloud storage, which they accessed with a warrant. It's confusing to me because apparently defense attorneys said that the defendants have been aware of the investigation since at least the past November, after one of their service providers received a subpoena. Yet they They were here. They didn't leave New York City, a tough jurisdiction. So, I thought Wonderland DAO last week was shocking, but crypto doesn't disappoint.
No.
Let's dive further on this with Nick Day, who's also been following this. We've got CoinDesk Global Policy Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day with us. Hello there, Nick. So CoinDesk has been following this. One of our reporters was in court the other day as the couple was being arraigned. What's the latest?
Good morning. Yeah, so we were in court yesterday. Some of our reporters were live at the scene. At the time, a judge did order that the two could be released on bond, but this was actually stayed by another judge in D.C. last night around 10 p.m. So as of this morning, both defendants should still be in lockup, and they will remain there until the D.C. court has a chance to review the overall case and specifically the bail order. But there were a lot of interesting details that came out during the hearing yesterday, including, but not limited to, apparently the couple allegedly had a bag full labeled burner phones under their bed. They had the aforementioned wallet addresses. They had a folder on their computer titled "Passport Ideas" on how to create or acquire illicit passports on the dark net, allegedly. A lot of interesting details.
Yeah, it seems like you would think this is the Keystone Cops of hackers, but at the same time, this was one of the biggest mysteries in crypto for many years. Second or third to who was Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, this was a major event in a lot of ways in the history of Bitfinex and ultimately the history of, for instance, Tether. But the interesting thing is that in the complaint, it didn't specifically say they were the hackers. It said a hacker broke into Bitfinex, but it didn't say they were. And so that leaves open the possibility that others could be indicted, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So the complaint statement of facts implied, I think, kind of heavily that those two are the hackers, but you're right. They did not explicitly say at any point that the two defendants were the hackers. The charges have nothing to do with the actual hack itself, just with, having the funds and conspiring to launder them. So it's very possible that there are still individuals out there who were responsible for the hack itself. And, even remembering that 3 years ago, I think Israeli authorities arrested two individuals on suspicion that they might have been the hackers. But again, we don't know for sure yet whether or not any of these four individuals arrested either 3 years ago or yesterday were behind the hack itself. Only that the couple arrested yesterday allegedly had access to, I think they said, the entire trove of nearly 120,000 Bitcoin that were stolen back in 2016. Although at this point, only 94,000 seem to have been recovered, with the remainder having been either laundered or frozen or sent through other wallets.
And it wasn't just Bitcoin, right? It was Monero.
As Lawrence kind of mentioned early on, it seems like there were a lot of, or as you were actually saying as well, there were a lot of kind of like careless errors here. But what was the role of blockchain data itself in terms of like tracking this? I mean, how much kind of like blockchain sleuthing was done in order to like get to these charges?
So this actually ties into something we ran last night around, I want to say somewhere between midnight and like 2 a.m. A little hazy on the specific time. A judge who ordered a warrant or signed a warrant actually wrote about this and really praised the role blockchain analytics had. So according to the complaint itself that was published yesterday, there was a pretty sophisticated set of transactions that were designed to try and obfuscate the source of the funds that the defendants allegedly utilized. So according to the complaint, they allegedly laundered funds through darknet markets like Alphabet. They deposited funds somewhere and then tried to withdraw them, hoping that they were commingling, and therefore you can kind of obfuscate where exactly those funds came from. There were statements that privacy coins like Monero were used to try and kind of hide the source of the funds. So there was a pretty sophisticated set of techniques used to try and you know, hide where exactly these funds came from, namely Bitfinex. But analytics were apparently a key player in tracking these funds from the original Bitfinex wallet to the first holding wallet, let's say, first recipient wallet after the hack, to the 2,000 other wallets that ultimately were seized. So, Judge, went on praising blockchain analytics. There were, you saw blog posts from a lot of the major blockchain analytics firms yesterday detailing how these funds were moved. So, the key things here does seem to be that the transparency of the Bitcoin ledger was a critical part of being able to track these funds and ultimately identify how, where they are and how to seize them.
I mean, the law enforcement must love the Bitcoin blockchain for tracking these transactions. I also wonder what do we know about because 3.6 billion was seized worth of Bitcoin. There was about 4.5 billion though altogether. So where's that other billion? And we also reported at CoinDesk in June of 2019 that the Gigi brothers from Israel were also connected potentially with the Bitfinex hack. So I wonder, this story seems to have more to it than meets the eye, that we just don't know. Is that your sense as well?
Yeah, so taking the second one first, I tried looking up what happened today, Gigi brothers, and doesn't seem to be any kind of real update from the Israeli court system in the last couple of years. So it's unclear to me whether or not they were convicted or if they are indeed connected to the hack specifically. It's very possible that they might have just claimed responsibility for something they didn't do, because some of the details that they described when they were arrested don't quite seem to match up with what we do know about the hack itself. And as far as the remaining, it's about 26 billion, I think, or 25, or sorry, excuse me, 25,000 Bitcoin that were not seized. It does seem like some of these are frozen in crypto exchange wallets, frozen by law enforcement officials or by the exchange itself in connection to them being from the Bitfinex hack. Some of them does seem to have been spent. Apparently, the couple allegedly bought, a PlayStation and gift cards, and some of your more innocuous everyday things, just using the Bitcoin that was from this hack. Some of these funds seem to have been disappeared. Again, they tried to use a pretty sophisticated set of techniques to just obfuscate where these funds came from and then where they went, which I'm not going to say that you have to admire or respect this, but if you're trying to launder funds, stolen from a crypto exchange, doing your best to obfuscate their source is probably the way to go, and probably something that they could have done a bit more effectively here.
So this raises a question: is ultimately how or what tipped off the feds to get a search warrant into Ilya Lichtenstein's cloud computing accounts that led them to this trove? Do we quite know yet what the tip-off was? Because again, Bitfinex was offering a hefty reward for it.
I don't think we know specifically what tipped off the federal agents investigating the case. We do know that a number of different departments were involved, including the IRS Criminal Investigation Service. So it's very possible that they were just plain tracking the Bitcoins, as they moved through the different wallets and as the different transactions were, conducted. But we haven't yet heard if there was, any kind of so-called smoking gun that set them off and said, "Oh, wow, this cloud wallet or this cloud spreadsheet definitely has like all the information we're looking for."
What was also interesting to note is that several times this couple tried to open up accounts on U.S.-based exchanges, and KYC AML restrictions basically raised some flags along the way. They were using, and they were also using email accounts in India. Correct? I mean, this is like there were certain things put in place already on the exchanges that may have tipped off the feds.
Very possible. And yeah, throwing this back to at the beginning, I mentioned that they had a folder of passport ideas, titled passport ideas, where they were trying to basically list down how they could acquire fake passports through the darknet. And it seems that they did try to set up a number of accounts at different crypto exchanges under not names not their own, presumably as a part of an effort to try and cash out the Bitcoin without putting their own names on it. And yeah, some of these accounts were frozen. And according to the feds, the alleged defendants actually kept track of which accounts were frozen. They had in their spreadsheet a list of the wallets that were still accessible or still active, and the ones that were frozen. So they were clearly keeping a very close eye on what they can or could not do.
In the meantime, CoinDesk reporting that the couple's cell phones and computers will be confiscated, and they will be given a flip phone and one internet-connected device, and monitored by pre-trial services so they can access their bank accounts and email their lawyers. But in case you want to check out their socials, you better do it now or archive that TikTok, because the Instagram for RazzleCon already private. All right. Nick, thanks for joining us. That was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com. Meantime, a pro-Bitcoiner is vying for a seat in Congress, seeking to unseat U.S. Representative Brad Sherman, who has been vocal about his wish to ban cryptocurrencies. She's an elementary school teacher. She supports the idea of a universal basic income and has the praise of Block CEO Jack Dorsey. Please join us in welcoming Aarika Rhodes, Democratic candidate for California's 32nd District. Welcome. Good morning, Aarika. Thanks for joining us. So, I saw you recently did a Twitter Spaces with Jack Dorsey on UBI and Bitcoin. Is he supporting your campaign? And if so, to what extent?
Yes. So it's funny how that happened. I just, I thank you for having me, and good morning, everyone. So basically what ended up happening was I've been learning a lot about Bitcoin and blockchain technology. And so I just had this idea of tweeting at Jack Dorsey, because I know that he has given money towards universal basic income pilots. And then that's how we connected. And then during my lunch break one day, sorry, that's my cat in the back. During my lunch break one day, we were able to jump on a Zoom call and have this really thoughtful conversation around poverty, innovative solutions to address it. We talked about Bitcoin, we talked about universal basic income. And then I just said, hey, there's a lot of controversy around, can both coexist? Would you mind having a Twitter Spaces with me? And then he agreed. And yes, he appears to be very supportive of my candidacy against Brad Sherman, which I'm very grateful for.
So are you interested in potentially the idea of universal basic income, giving people money directly and giving people Bitcoin?
I am. So I think that we could approach this in many different ways. I think the misconception about a universal basic income is that in order to have it, you have to print money. But I feel differently. So we went through the whole federal budget, and we were really sifting through current government programs that are proving to not pull people out of poverty, that have an abundance of waste, and that have means tested, where basically you are paying the administration costs that end up being more than the government program. And so my thought is maybe if we get rid of those programs that are not working and make other cuts, reallocate funds towards giving people a universal basic income, then we would be able to not only not print money, but we can start addressing poverty in a meaningful way. Also, when you look at people that are experiencing homelessness, 75% of those people actually have cell phones. And so that's why I'm very attracted to the Lightning Network, because it might be the way that we can allocate money to them. And so that's what we're still working out. Do I have the exact plan? No, because I'm still learning, but it is something that we are looking into, because if we're going to solve, poverty, we have to start being innovative around it. And I think that the Lightning Network offers that. And then I'll just use my campaign, for example. So we have, okay, sorry, go ahead.
You bring up poverty. You have a lot of millionaires and billionaires backing you, tech millionaires and billionaires backing you. And there is a big divide, particularly in places like San Francisco, and you see it on the streets, between the very rich who can get their private buses to go to and from work for their employees, and the poor and the homeless. So are you being used by these billionaires and millionaires just to get Brad Sherman out of the way, and then you get discarded? This is a serious question.
Yeah, no, I don't know where you're getting backed by a bunch of millionaires and billionaires, because
Zach,
when our average, go ahead.
Yeah. All right. For instance, you have Zach Prince. He donated from BlockFi. He donated to your campaign. BlockFi was stopped recently by the state of New Jersey and some other places as well for selling unregistered securities. And they're also under the eye of the SEC now, who's looking into what they're doing. He donated to your campaign. Are you planning on giving back the money he gave, for instance?
Well, I wasn't aware. I personally was not aware. I'll have to go to my accountant and ask. But I want to say very unequivocally, most of our donations are from everyday individuals. Our campaign does not seek out millionaires and billionaires. I would never do that. I think Jack Dorsey is a different type of individual, and I think he upholds character and integrity. We saw that in the pandemic when he gave money to like Humanity Forward, to mayors that are trying to implement a universal basic income trial. And so that is why I personally sought out his support. I'm not personally aware that he had donated, but I will absolutely reach out to my accountant today about it. Look, our campaign is really about people, and it's really about solving problems. I'm a teacher. I've never done this before. So we are learning as we go. And, the thing about campaign finance is that it's an imperative, because it's really, really hard for someone like me, an everyday person, to actually run. So if there is a millionaire or someone that has means that supports my agenda and my platform, they can absolutely donate to my candidacy. But if someone is like a corrupt individual, this is important, because if someone is a corrupt individual, I don't want their money. And there's been many cases where people have reached out to me personally to ask to donate, and I've walked away from that money. It's in the $30,000, $40,000 range. So I'm a very stand-up person, and I don't want to be labeled as someone that has bad character integrity, because that is not true.
But that no one's questioning that. But I think the question here is not just about billionaires and millionaires. They can donate wherever they want. More power to them. They made their money, they earned it. But the question is whether or not specifically tech millionaires and billionaires, tech people who have gotten rich, and yet in a state where there is such a big divide, are you being used to push out a congressman who maybe might not be agreeable in a lot of ways, but are you just a means to an end? Or what do you say to that?
I think that everybody that gets behind a political candidate has their own vested interests. But I have my eye on the prize, and everything that I've been very consistent about what I stand for, and that is that to serve on the Education and Financial Services Committee, and to fight for education reform, foster care reform, addressing situations where it comes to inequality. And so people know what my priorities are. Do I support Bitcoin? Yes. I think that it is a way for economic justice. Do I love the Lightning Network? Absolutely. I think it is the future. But my priorities are to really make our country, prioritizing our young people and modernizing our education system, implementing financial literacies in schools. And so if they're not clear when I'm telling them what I stand for, then that's their decision. But I'm very straight up about what I stand for.
So,
and also too, I think. Oh, I was going to say, and I also think that too, yes, there is a vested interest in my race because Brad Sherman is very anti-Bitcoin and crypto and blockchain, but it's also because he gets his money from the big banks. And, and I think, so there is a lot of excitement around my race because of where he gets his money from. Pawn shops, check cashing. I just tweeted out just 2 examples of where he's taking unsound money.
So Jack Dorsey is obviously a very powerful supporter to have in the crypto world. I'm just curious, though, because Jack Dorsey himself has become kind of in the center of a bunch of controversy. So he holds a fairly controversial view. He's very critical of the development of Web3, in particular the involvement of venture capital. I'm sure you've seen this. He got, blocked by various venture capitalists because he's basically saying that, Web3 is becoming more centralized and kind of controlled by venture capital. I'm just curious if you've been following that whole thing and and what your take is on it.
Yeah, I do know that there could be controversy around him. I was mostly interested in his position on a universal basic income and the data since he invested in different pilots. I have not personally spent time learning about Web3. I'm really mostly interested in how can we practically solve these issues. So I'm not really too familiar.
Aarika, just one last question before we wrap, but is there an update on Brad Sherman? I know you've been trying to debate him before the June primary. Will he agree to something?
So yes, we are trying to debate him. The status on that is if we win the primary, then he's more open to having a debate, where I absolutely disagree with that. I think because of the redistricting, we inherited a bunch of new cities and they had a different representative. And I think that if we're going to advocate for democracy, if we're going to say that we want fair and free elections, right, then I think incumbents should debate their primary challengers, especially one like me that's raised over $250,000, has $200,000 cash on hand, and has a lot of support in the community. And I think it's very important that people can see the difference between him and I. Like, to go back to the point of like money, where people are getting money. So I think that's something that people should know. I think what he's done in Congress is not sufficient for being in there for 25 years. And am I inexperienced in politics? Sure. But you have a bunch of young freshman and sophomore Congress members that are passing more legislation than these long-term incumbents. And I think that there is a great appetite for change. And so we are going to be relentless to get this debate. And we're hoping that he agrees to it. And if not a debate, at least a town hall or a public forum or something where people can see the differences.
All right, Ben Sherman, the challenge is out there. Debate Aarika Rhodes. Thank you, Aarika, for joining us. Good luck on the primary in June. That was Aarika Rhodes, Democratic candidate for California's 32nd District. Coming up, a crypto markets update with trading educator TheoTrade.
What's up, everybody? This is Spencer Dinwiddie.
And I'm Solo Cisse.
And this is New Money, brought to you by CoinDesk.
All I hear, go get the money. So I go get it. Hate means I do something right. So I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. Yeah, I'ma let him. I hit the nail on the head. Yeah, I'ma let him.
What we'll see is money not only being exchanged for this digital currency, but the frictionless movement across borders. It's gonna be able to flow as easy as a text message.
Staying true to yourself, right? Like, you've always been true to yourself.
I just want to share that with everybody. You could be yourself in full capacity.
It's our duty to take our visions and be fearless in our pursuit.
Be my most authentic self and show people that, look, I'm an athlete, and yes, I'm also a part of the LGBT community.
My goal is to have, my own NFT, my own entire IP, like my own everything.
How do you think, blockchain and crypto impacts the way you think about it?
I think everyone has some sort of how'd you get into Bitcoin? It's like asking someone if they smoke. It's like, yo.
Embracing where the world is going. And when the whole world shut down, we saw just how important tech was.
It was more so of my style and the foods that I cooked that kind of pushed me. I wanted to live the lifestyle of an athlete or an artist while doing what I love.
Having that open mind, having that flexibility just allows you to be of so much more service to, youth or society in general.
Gamers, maybe it's because you guys just hustle different.
Anything you want to be great at, you got to put hours and hours in every single day.
The Crypto Markets Update is brought to you by KuCoin, the best place to find the next crypto gem. Live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XPX index currently at $44,119. Bitcoin is up about 1.3% over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk Ether price ETX index at 3177. ETH is also rising 2.6%. The DFX CoinDesk's DeFi index at 336, also making an advance of almost 4% for the day.
So, joining us now, of course, it's not the only thing we're talking about is what happened with the Bitfinex hack. There's a lot happening in the market. So joining us now to discuss the crypto markets is Don Kaufman. He's the co-founder of trading educator TheoTrade. Good morning, Don. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, so the markets have been fairly flat over the past couple of days, but they're up since Friday. So, what do you think is happening right now? Have we finally turned a corner in that sell-off that's been brutally punishing a lot of the holders over the past few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're looking at almost a 50% decline since some of the recent highs, specifically in Bitcoin. Again, almost a 50% decline. You know, one of the most interesting things, though, that we've seen over the last couple of days is there was a great degree of correlation between Bitcoin specifically and most of the crypto products and other major asset classes. And that really, it decoupled specifically on February 4th. I mean, again, Bitcoin, it just absolutely exploded. It ripped to the upside, which in very large part we believe is actually due to an interest rate shock that was kind of felt around the entire globe.
You know, I know, Lawrence mentioned that we're moving on to markets, but, the $3.6 billion seized by law enforcement related to this $4.5 billion hack on Bitfinex, would that have any impact on price in crypto?
So I would say absolutely not. It's negligible in the bigger scheme of things. And again, I'm much more a trader. If anything, maybe a little bit of short-term volatility. But I got to tell you, though, it makes for some spectacular news specifically. And that video that you showed a few minutes ago there, I still have a really tough time believing that is going to lead to a hacker. Absolutely classic. That's one that, again, I've got to grab that one for sure.
But nonetheless, Don, I mean, the stories, we've been reporting that something was afoot in in that hacked Bitcoin over the past, since February 1st, essentially. And the move up in Bitcoin happened just a couple of days afterwards. So February, was it 6 or 7? It was when things started to really move. Do you think that maybe, I don't want to say that people who had inside information or were tipped off, but do you think that maybe that had, at the very least, somebody acted on it saying, look, and this was something that was going around the internet for a couple of days, for several days, was that, hey, something is afoot. It might be the feds have finally caught that Bitcoin. And do you think that maybe that was sort of like somebody buying on the positive rumor?
Yeah, I really don't feel that had a lot to do with the price action specifically inside of in Bitcoin. Again, those assets ultimately are frozen at this point in time. I happened to spend 15 years prior to that in the brokerage industry. We've seen really substantial, hacks in the past before, but when it comes to Bitcoin, and again, you're looking at the original pricing of 3.6 billion that was ultimately locked down. Again, I can take a look at price action, though, specific to Bitcoin, and you can look at the jobs number from last Friday, the major sell-off inside of the U.S. bond market, again, that kind of went entirely around the globe. And that is really where we saw that price action get fast, get furious. It started with looked like some short covering, specifically in Bitcoin futures, and then just grip hold. I mean, what I think we saw over the last couple of days, this is like a quintessential bear market rally. Now, of course, nobody wants to, admit to that, but you have a 50% decline, this explosive move to the upside. We're just kind of moderating right now, possibly waiting for even the CPI number to come out tomorrow. You got to look now at crypto as much more of a mainstream asset class than this, autonomous vehicle. Again, I've been trading pretty much most of my adult life, and how often does a trader get a brand new asset class handed to them? Unfortunately, that asset class, though, is in high degrees of correlation, specifically with other asset classes, including equities, indices, and it's also trading now with the bond market.
Don, speaking of correlations, anything interesting happening in the altcoin market that we should be looking out for? Anything that you're paying attention to? We talk a lot about Bitcoin and equities, but what's going on in alts that's caught your attention?
Yeah, no, nothing more than just, again, some short-term volatility, very specific to what has happened in Bitcoin. You have to look at, again, I'm much more of like the quantitative, more arbitrage from a background point of view. And I tend to look at the relationship between, again, what is the main force here, Bitcoin or, Ethereum doing versus some of the altcoins. That volatility, though, has almost been kind of a one for one. Again, not too impressed that there's not, the breakup of correlation that maybe we would have expected in some, in the midst of some extreme volatility. Enough, though, that there's definitely some arbitrage opportunities opening up in there.
All right, Don, thanks for your analysis. That was TheoTrade co-founder Don Kaufman. Coming up, the UK seems confused over whether or not they want to develop a central bank digital currency. We'll talk to a startup trying to make it happen.
The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
So we've been hearing a lot about central bank digital currencies these days. We have China basically launching at the Beijing Olympics. We have the U.S. Federal Reserve trying to decide if they want to launch a central bank digital currency or not. Meanwhile, the Bank of England is also on the fence about whether or not to develop a digital pound. Our next guest has won a prestigious research grant from the UK government to develop a CBDC. Joining us now is Kene Ezeji-Okoye, co-founder and president of British blockchain firm Millicent. Welcome, Kene.
Thanks very much for having me.
So let's just jump right into it. CBDCs, super controversial. I think there's a few levels of controversy, but the first one is, do we need them? Like, why do we actually need them, right? Because they clearly come with problems, which we could get to later. But what is the strongest argument for why we actually need a central bank digital currency?
Well, I think even in today's show, we've seen stuff like a universal basic income would be a perfect use case for a CBDC. We can issue money cheaply and easily to the people who need it the most. Would also enable frictionless trade around the world. Your new money segment, for instance, says sending money as easy as a text message. A CBDC would definitely facilitate doing that.
But I guess that sort of leads to my next question, which is like, okay, fine, there's probably some benefits, but there's clearly costs, and one of the biggest costs is privacy, right? So CBDCs are sort of trackable by design. They're digital currencies that are issued by central banks. And I guess the question is it really possible to have privacy protections within this framework?
Absolutely. I actually read your piece on CNN the other day, Emily, that espoused Bitcoin as a good alternative to a CBDC for the privacy reason. And respectfully, I disagree with that. I think, as we saw again in today's show, Bitcoin is very trackable. It tracked the Bitfinex hackers. And a CBDC, the hybrid version of a CBDC, which is favored by the Bank of England's research panel, also the Bank for International Settlements likes the hybrid model. That is where the public assets, the central bank assets, back the currency, but it's distributed by the private sector, a firm like Millicent, for example. And we can use technology such as zero-knowledge proofs to make a CBDC act very much as cash. And obviously, there are trade-offs involved. We need to balance KYC and AML laws with the user's right for privacy and the right to have sovereignty over their own assets. I think the hybrid model is a perfect way to do that, and that is really what we're looking into. In addition to CBDCs, I should mention Millicent is also looking into stablecoins, regulatory compliant stablecoins. That is part of our remit from the UKRI grant.
So quickly, just to clarify, are you saying that you are aiming to develop a CBDC that actually protects privacy more than Bitcoin does?
I'm saying that's one of the things that we're looking into, yes. We are working currently on releasing a stablecoin that it follows the current e-money regulations and will meet the MiCA regulations coming out in Europe. And that would be an ideal framework to launch a CBDC on in the years to come.
So about stablecoins, because there hasn't been much of a demand for pound stablecoins, pound-backed stablecoins to begin with. We see it has almost no effect on the market whatsoever. There doesn't seem to be any usage of it, other than occasional trading on crypto exchanges. But that's it. What kind of proof do you have that a CBDC on the British pound would actually have people willing or wanting it? I mean, they can use their credit cards, they can use debit cards. I transacted using my phone yesterday. It took me a lot faster than even using crypto, using a centralized, of course, firm. But nonetheless, what gives you the sense that there's a demand for any of this?
Well, there are a few points that you touched on there. From the consumer's point of view, using a debit card is absolutely fine. But from a merchant's point of view, it's actually terrible. If you look at Amazon here in the UK, they announced at the end of last year that they were going to stop accepting Visa credit cards because the fees were too high. Eventually, Visa and Amazon were able to resolve that with a massive fee reduction. But small and medium businesses, they don't have the power that Amazon has to bully Visa. So they're paying exorbitant fees that really hurt the bottom line, and that gets passed on to consumers. If we can disintermediate the credit card duopoly, we can save a lot of people a lot of money, maybe in ways that are less obvious to the consumer, but from an economic perspective, there's definitely a lot of savings to be had. Speaking to the stablecoin, go ahead.
I'll let you continue because
Okay, so speaking to the demand for a pound-based stablecoin or CBDC, I should mention we're also working on a digital euro-based stablecoin. We are working with the Digital Euro Association, who are our partners. They're a fantastic think tank out of Berlin. But if you look at the stablecoin market, 98% of the $150 billion in stablecoins currently in the crypto market are US dollar-based. And that's because they're primarily used as trading pairs on the exchanges. But when we start to see these digital currencies used in real life, there's going to be much more demand for people to use the currencies that they're paid their salaries in, that they can use at the stores, etc. The world isn't denominated in the US dollar. The US dollar is actually at a 25-year low in terms of global foreign exchange reserves. It's down from over 70% in 1999 to 59% currently. Whereas the euro has grown to represent over 20% of global foreign exchange reserves and is used in 40% of international payment settlements via the SWIFT network. So there will be a demand for this. If people are getting their salary paid in euros, they're going to want a euro stablecoin to spend it in the metaverse or at the supermarket.
But it seems that the big complaint then is that Visa just charges too much. Why not just create a competitor to Visa? Or if the British government were so inclined, they could limit what Visa charges the merchants. Why do they have to go out and build an entire network, an entire system of CBDCs when all they have to do is just pass legislation to cap what Visa charges? Why don't they just save everyone the hassle and do that?
Well, I think it's slightly funny to be on a crypto show saying that we need more legislation, although I do agree that legislation is important. Releasing
we're not cheerleading. We're
this could be public.
Asking questions.
Fair. This isn't saying that the public solution is the only way. A CBDC could be a great way to achieve this. The hybrid solution, where the public and the private sectors work together, or even just private stablecoins, create more competition in the market, which is generally a good thing as far as consumers are concerned. Legislating and keeping essentially a duopoly in charge, I personally don't think is the way forward. Creating freer and more open markets is probably a better way.
In creating a central bank digital currency or a regulated stablecoin, are you looking to create an entirely new blockchain, or are you picking back up a new one, just very basic?
Yes, we are creating our own blockchain. Part of our remit from UK Research and Innovation is to develop a new, highly scalable and highly secure blockchain. We're doing that using
Would it be government run?
Directed acyclic. No, this will be private. The rails could be in future used by the government because it's all open source. So we use a DAG-based consensus with a blockchain foundation for smart contracts.
I did see that the UK's House of Lords also published a report, CBDC is a solution in search of a problem, and they concluded that there's no convincing case for why the UK needs a central bank digital currency. They also found that CBDCs may provide some advantages, but also significant challenges for financial stability and the protection of privacy. So is developing a CBDC in the UK an uphill battle to begin with?
No, I don't think so. Again, I think the hybrid model where we use the public and private sectors in tandem really solves a lot of the problems that were mentioned in the report by the House of Lords. And I think that companies like Millicent, as well as associations like the Digital Pound Foundation, need to work in tandem with legislators to really educate and keep people abreast of everything that's going on. Crypto and digital currencies in general is an incredibly fast-moving sector. These legislators have a lot to pay attention to. And even when you're full-time in crypto, it moves very fast and there's a lot to pay attention to. So I think we have to work with the legislators. And that's really one of the things that Millicent wants to do, is abide by current regulations, but help to shape the future ones as well.
Well, Kene, congratulations on this grant, and looking forward to seeing how your project develops. That was Millicent co-founder and president Kene Ezeji-Okoye. All right, let's check in with crypto Twitter for a tweet of the day. This one from Cypherpunk Bitcoiner Jameson Lopp tweeting, "Imagine sitting on $4 billion in stolen Bitcoin, knowing you're being hunted by nation states and deciding that New York City is a smart place to hole up." That's it for That's it for first.
It absolutely is. Nobody suspected them for years.
Well.
Nobody suspected them for years.
All right, Lawrence Lewitton, Emily Parker. If you see Lawrence's Coinbase shut down, you know why. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Meantime, check out The Hash at noon and all about Bitcoin at 3 o'clock. You're watching CoinDesk TV. Next up, stay tuned for the daily forecast to see what's happening in the Asia crypto markets.
Join thousands of NFT traders who already start their day on CryptoSlam.
You might think meme coins are a big joke, but lately we're not so sure. Welcome to the Daily Forecast, February 9th, 2022. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast, covering all things blockchain. While the hype has moved from meme coins to the metaverse, a couple of the biggest names in the space are showing real staying power. How long can that last? Well, we're going to take a look at that story and a whole lot more coming up. Let's get you up to speed from Asia to the world. Let's kick off with what's getting Asia talking today. First up, China is working on standardization of the digital yuan as its plans for the currency steams ahead. The People's Bank of China, or PBOC, says it will work with 3 other central departments on aspects including infrastructure, information security, and valuation to establish the standard for eCNYs in the next 5 years. The PBOC's document also says that financial cooperation will be promoted among countries involved in its Belt and Road Initiative. Read cross-border ease of financial transactions with friendly trade partners. Now, back in January, the PBOC said historical transaction values reached almost 90 billion yuan, or over $11 billion US dollars, by the end of last year. And the digital currency is also currently being showcased at the Beijing Winter Olympics, a debut, if you will, on the world stage. Meanwhile, in India, investors are throwing off concerns over new taxes. Seems India's love of crypto shows no signs of slowing down. Crypto exchange CoinDesk says it now has 10 million registered users. That's a massive leap from August last year when it had just 3.5 million. That's the same month that it saw its Series C fundraise led by Eduardo Saverin's B Capital, which crowned the company as India's first crypto unicorn. The milestone comes despite many investors expressing dismay at last week's budget announcement of a 30% tax on income from crypto transfers. And you can find those stories and a whole lot more at forecast.news. Over in the markets, while meme coins have been much derided, Dogecoin and Shiba Inu were both leaders of the pack amongst last week's crypto market rally. So, have they become too big to be a joke? Forecast News' Lachlan Keller reports.
Doge's Twitter account clocked 3 million followers as its price climbed over the weekend, briefly re-entering the crypto top 10. SHIB also rose over the weekend, is currently the most widely held ERC20 token among the largest 1,000 Ethereum wallets. The low value of meme coins has allowed many investors to dabble in what can be high-reward assets. But the chance of emulating Doge and SHIB's success has become diluted with the ever-increasing number of meme coins entering the market. While both SHIB and Doge built their success on a strong sense of community that says the coins have real use cases, one industry expert told Forecast it's more about branding.
The way we should think about Dogecoin is that it is a stray dog. It is an abandoned project. And then somehow it was found and taken care of, and it lives primarily on the back of its brand power and kind of the mass appeal that it has as a social media meme.
Caseland says meme coins thrive off excitement, and as they are simple and cheap, it's easy to build hype around them, unlike more complicated assets. When it comes to the long term, reality comes into play, and investors need to look for signs of maturity, like whether a token can help solve real-world problem or if it has become a subject of discussion for regulators. For Forecast News, I'm Lachlan Keller.
Well, the metaverse is possibly the hottest buzzword at the moment. It's got everyone from Tim Cook at Apple to Bernard Arnault, the LVMH CEO, all interested in the metaverse right now. And if you're so inclined, you can also study it at Stanford, or maybe you even attended a match at the Australian Open already in this virtual new world. But it could be just the beginning. And Duke Liu, executive chairman of Spores Network, a cross-chain DeFi-powered NFT marketplace, is here to tell us which inning we're in when it comes to the metaverse. Duke, good to have you with us again.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so every day we hear of so many new events and activities that people are bringing into the virtual world. What are some of the projects you're most interested in, you're most excited about in the metaverse right now?
To your point of which inning we're playing in, I think our first inning, whether it is Decentraland, which is, I would say, the most Web3 project out there in metaverses, where it's really an open world, open experience, voxel-based system, to something like Sandbox, which is getting a bit more Web 2-like. There's projects such as Metaverse as a Service is one category where you can be the Australian Open and you can work with a metaverse builder and they can build that, your version of the metaverse for you. Then there are metaverses that are full on more like gaming experiences. We're seeing now projects that are mimicking Web 2 games like Counter-Strike and the lot. So that'll be more, Unreal/Unity gaming-based systems that will play out. There are mobile metaverses that we're seeing where it's like combining AR with your mobile phone, so that you can literally walk around, build your own sort of MySpace, right, that you can hang out in and share that space with your friends.
All right, it is an evolution, as you've said. It's not a revolution. It really is an evolution, and we're seeing this in music as well. Warner Music, one of the biggest music labels globally, partnering with the Sandbox for virtual performance space. But is everybody ready yet? I mean, we heard about the Decentraland concert and some disgruntled attendee at Decentraland's AO Metaverse was greeted by a rather bare-looking screen. They were kind of disappointed. Is everybody ready for this kind of experiential thing that we kind of expect at a certain quality level.
You have to go into the details of that platform and whether it's technologically ready. I don't know whether Decentraland was ready. Sandbox, again, I don't know how a voxel type experience will materialize as a music concert. I think, are you going to be watching voxel versions of the artists? Other metaverses are moving more towards, having actual video technology. But even that, once you move into the world of true video, it's a heavy experience. Even the Web 2 systems like Fortnite can't handle the heavy video yet.
That's a great point. And finally, as if I don't feel guilty enough about not getting to the gym, virtual reality workouts like Supernatural and Peloton Lane Break are another fascinating area. We're really seeing real-world benefits from a virtual activity, and they're definitely a step up from Wii in the mid-2000s. I had to borrow somebody else's Wii. I never had one myself. But what are your thoughts here? Are we just kind of ramping up experiences here?
I'm very interested in understanding that space because it's a combination of taking the physical, combining it with, virtualization, but also really the training aspect. Right, because that's what it really comes down to, is whether you can actually take the nuances of training and your trainer and then integrate it into either the AI or the system in which you are training for. So I guess my 2 cents on that would be, I think something like Peloton, who's already trying to do at-home experiences, it makes a bit more sense that they try to plop on a VR headset and to go fully digital. As long as that works for you, if the Peloton way of exercising works for you, then it might work, but it won't work for everybody. So I'd love to see if there's a full metaverse version. My only concern to be like, are you sweating in your living room carpet? Like, is that a good experience?
It is. It's a brave new world, including heading to the gym right at home, and no excuses anymore. Duke, thank you so much. It's a no excuse conversation always. We appreciate it. And that's the daily forecast from our vantage point right here in Asia. For more, visit forecast.news. I'm Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. Until the next time.